Natasha is doing math tests. She's playing with stones, reading, and sorting through her things. For an hour, 2 hours, 3. She's 10. She's alone. There's no sunlight in her room. A room that can be opened only from the outside. Behind the door, there's a second one, made of concrete and reinforced with steel. It weighs 330 pounds and can be unlocked with hidden thread pegs. Then, there's another door of metal. Then stairs. And another small door concealed behind a heavy cupboard, another flight of stairs. They lead into a garage. The entrance to the cellar is concealed under a floor panel. The girl will outsmart the one who locked her up in the underground. She will be free. But before that, many years will pass. This is the story of Natascha Kampusch from Austria. Natasha wanted to be independent, even if it meant going to school alone without your mother. What else could you do after a fight? First, she says her daughter is sluggish, and then she makes her wear these ugly glasses. After all, there are only so many ways to act independently when you're 10. Natasha slammed the front door and left for school. But there, by the side of the road, a man was standing, as if he was waiting for something, or someone. The girl considered crossing the street, but that would be so childish. She's old enough. Natasha went ahead, a decision that would change her life forever. The man grabbed Natasha and pulled her into his white minibus. "What's your shoe size?" was the first question the girl asked her captor. Then other questions followed. How old he was, if he was married, if he had kids. Natasha was smart enough to grasp what was going on. She saw it on TV. In cases like this, you should learn as much as you can about the kidnapper. But the man was in no rush to answer. He drove his minibus to a town on the outskirts of Vienna, wrapped the girl in a blue blanket, and carried her inside his house. Then, he took Natasha, still covered in the blanket, somewhere downstairs. The man switched off the light and left her alone in the dark. This is how Natascha Kampusch's captivity began. A little over 50 square feet, a sink, a toilet, a table, and a wall bed. The room is soundproof. Later, the captor would install a communication system here to talk with Natasha. And there was the light bulbs. They went on in the morning and died out in the evening. Meanwhile, drama was unfolding in Vienna. The police looked everywhere for the missing girl, but in vain. It was as if Natasha had disappeared into thin air. The investigators check white minibuses. Unknowingly, they even happen to visit the kidnapper's yard among the many. The owner lets them search his vehicle without hesitation. He's so convincing and polite. The officers leave his place in no time. The girl asks to kiss her goodnight, and he complies with the request. From time to time, he even comes into the bunker to read her a book. Natasha asks to get her some math tests, and the man does. He also checks them, and having found a mistake, he draws a big red cross over her whole work. "Listen and behave," the captor repeats his mantra.
If anything had happened to him, or he had been taken ill, he'd never have got it open. I would have been sealed up like an Egyptian pharaoh, buried alive, dead and mummified.
Years go by. The man thinks he, like a potter out of clay, will mold her into a perfect doll. That the girl, eventually, will accept her fate as something normal. But Natasha stays focused. In her mind, she talks with her future self. "I'll get you out of here. the older, stronger Natasha says. For a long time, the girl keeps wearing the dress she had on the day of her capture.
I wanted to keep my dress on, day and night. I didn't want to give up anything or reveal anything about myself.
So who is this guy that has the keys to the underground room? He claims he's an Egyptian god. He wants Natasha to call him Maestro or my lord. He adores Hitler and hates everyone around him. He shoots birds just for fun. He beats Natasha, starves her for several days at a time, harasses and abuses her. But there he is as well, a modest communications technician, responsible at work, always polite, doesn't like arguing with strangers. He's close to his mom, who brings him food for the week on Fridays. His name is Wolfgang Přiklopil. He was 35 the year he captured Natasha. The accounts of Wolfgang differ. Some say he was almost invisible, and the others remember him as a rude man. But there are things that those who knew Přiklopil agree on. He loved machines, had no interest in people, and just vanished the moment friendly conversations turned to women. According to journalists Alan Hall and Michael Leidig, that's what Wolfgang had to say about girls. They don't interest me. I want a partner who will understand when I want to be alone, who can cook well, is happy to be only a housewife, who looks good but doesn't consider looks important. I want a woman who will simply support me in everything I do. The cellar was built by Wolfgang's grandfather as a nuclear bomb shelter during the Cold War. About 5 years before the kidnapping, Přiklopil started remodeling it into a room. He put a lot of effort into it. The only thing is that getting down into the bunker is no easy task. It takes more than an hour to unlock all the doors, but Wolfgang goes through the routine over and over again. He's wrapped a present for himself and wrapped it real good. First of all, he's finally in full control over somebody. Secondly, it seems the man wanted to grow Natasha like a crystal in salt water. He plans to marry her. In his mind, the girl is supposed to become a kind of beautiful Aryan servant and adoring companion. So, as part of his vision, he bleached Natasha's hair. He films her. There are images of Natasha eating her birthday cake. There are images of her running up and down the stairs, a punishment made up by this deranged Egyptian god. How did Přiklopil choose Natasha? We don't know for sure. It is true that Wolfgang and Natasha's parents were interconnected in the lace of human contacts. At least, they had common acquaintances. From time to time, Wolfgang dropped into a bar and grill, Christine's Schnellimbiss, in an industrial district of Vienna. Natasha's father, Ludwig Koch, frequented the bar too, sometimes along with his wife and daughter. Throughout the years, Přiklopil kept Natasha in captivity. He still occasionally came to the bar to down his glass of apple juice. He didn't drink alcohol, and he didn't smoke. When Natasha turns 12, Wolfgang starts taking her upstairs, inside his house. Here, he makes the girl do household chores. Slowly but steadily, she's transformed into a maid. At the same time, Natasha's forbidden to touch things with her bare hands. Her bleached locks are cut short and covered with a plastic cap. Not a single hair, not a single fingerprint is to be left upstairs. And it's not only about hiding the evidence of his crime. Přiklopil is simply disgusted. The man is a clean freak. He wants everything to be perfect behind his closed door and drawn curtains. The tiles have to sparkle, each and every one of them. And if Natasha doesn't make them sparkle, he'll punish her, and she's not allowed to cry.
He took me by the throat and dragged me, joking me, to the bathroom, where he held my face over the sink so I couldn't cry anymore. He wouldn't let me cry because he was afraid the hydrochloric acid in my tears would corrode his towels.
Přiklopil grows older, so does Natasha. In 2004, he starts taking her upstairs to his bedroom for the night. He lies down on the bed and fastens the girl to his wrist with cable ties. Later, Natasha would rarely speak about the sexual relationship with her captor. Most of the time, Přiklopil just wanted to have her near. But then, if he allowed the girl to take a seat anywhere around the house, he'd cover a chair with a newspaper for her. On a night like this, Natasha managed to take a step outside. She gained Wolfgang's trust and persuaded him to take her for a walk in his garden. The most pleasant thing, she'd say, was to feel the wind on her skin again. The girl didn't want to deprive herself of that feeling. Natasha was always reminding herself of who she was and where she was from. On rare occasions, Wolfgang took her into the outside world. There were 13 trips all in all. Mainly, they went to empty apartments Přiklopil was renovating. Once, he took Natasha to a ski resort, but she didn't have a chance to escape. Moreover, she was downright scared. Přiklopil told her any attempt to leave him would end in death. Natasha's parents were divorced. Her father, Ludwig Koch, hired a private detective who eventually decided Natasha's mother was to blame. The man even suggested she'd buried her daughter's body in a pond and demanded to search the bottom. His theory proved wrong, just like all the others. For 8 long years, no one knew where Natascha Kampusch was.
Natasha was never dead for me. No one ever showed me any proof. There was no evidence to the contrary. So I always believed Natasha was alive. Right through the 8.5 years.
Die ganzen 8,5 Jahre.
When the mother saw her daughter again, Natasha was no longer the plump and freckled little girl she knew. She was 18, and she weighed a mere 6.5 pounds more than she did at the time of the kidnapping. The sound of a vacuum cleaner served a key role that day. August 23, 2006. The girl is vacuuming her captor's BMW he plans to sell. Přiklopil's watching her. Then, a buyer calls. Natasha goes on with her work. Přiklopil steps aside with his cell phone so that the sound of the vacuum cleaner doesn't interrupt the conversation. Natasha leaves the cleaner, on, and rushes to the open gates. Then, she runs, as fast as she can, jumping over the fences. She gets to a neighbor's house a few blocks away, and the woman calls the police. Natasha is free. The same day she escaped, Wolfgang committed suicide, jumping in front of a train. 4 years after her escape, Natasha published a book about her imprisonment, 3,096 Days. Today, she has a jewelry line, rides horses, and takes singing lessons. Natasha never became a loner. She often meets up with her friends. The only thing left from the times of her captivity is her perfectionism. The girl was being punished for every mistake for 8 long years. I think my whole life was about not to fail. That's why I survived captivity. The will to survive, that's a part of us humans. And maybe, in part, that's the reason of my perfectionism. Kampusch came into possession of the house she was kept in. Now, she's the only owner, and she visits regularly. The underground chamber was filled up in 2011. As for the house, Natasha keeps it clean. That is how she can look at the place of her trauma from another perspective. It helps her to remind herself that despite years spent in captivity, Natasha managed to preserve her inner self, and the owner of this house is a symbol of her personal victory.